Draft Mechanic is a proud member of Punchboard Media. Pull up a chair at punchboardmedia.com. Draft Mechanic, episode 91.
On this episode of Draft Mechanic, we discuss recent plays of Songbirds, Azul, Glass of Sintra, and Gizmos. We've got a 6-pack review of City of Gears, which we're putting on tap. I've got a quick beer primer on Biere de Champagne, and we talk about board gaming resolutions. So sit back, relax, grab a pint, and enjoy the show.
You've seen the future and it works to take a mile. Know that all is for the best in the best of our
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Draft Mechanic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Danielle.
And Draft Mechanic is the podcast about board games and craft beer and anything we can do to tie the two together.
Here at Draft Mechanic, we like our beer like we like our board games.
Maybe with a bit of festive cheer.
Certainly this time of year.
Yes, this episode is actually releasing on Christmas Eve Day, so if you are listening to this day of release, I assume you are traveling somewhere, and whenever you're listening to it, thank you for joining us on this episode of Draft Mechanic.
Although I do have to say, none of the games we're talking about have any particular amount of festive cheer in them.
No, but you pulled it together with the beer segment, kinda, yeah?
That's true.
Whatever, we get one chance a year to do the festive cheer episode, so I'm going to let it just kind of be there.
Hey, maybe one of the birds in Songbirds is a partridge.
There you go.
I don't know. Probably not.
So yes, if this is your first episode of Draft Mechanic, thank you so much for joining us today. If you're a returning listener, we love you so much as well. You can find us on the internet at draftmechanic.net and at Draft Mechanic on your social media feeds of choice.
We've also got a Board Game Geek Guild. That is guild number 2470. There will be a thread up for this episode as there is for every episode. So if you're listening to us and you're like, hey, I want to tell them something about that, that is the place to do it.
While you're talking about Board Game Geek, I should mention our new micro badgers. People that have picked up the Draft Mechanic micro badge on Board Game Geek.
Just such tiny badgers.
Tiny badgers. So thank you very much to Joshua Acosta, who you will hear on the Shuffle podcast, and also Randall Lloyd, a local friend of ours who is with Eagle Griffin Games. Thanks to both of y'all for picking up that micro badge. If you want to get it, you can go to our guild and find that thread, and we can give you some Geek Gold if you need it to get that micro badge, because Geek Gold is abundant. Is very abundant.
It's actually about to be a little bit more abundant because Board Game Geek is doing their fundraiser right now, and that is where the majority of the Geek Gold that I know we're going to be contributing comes from. If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, our next meetup is going to be on Thursday, January 3rd at Good Road Cider Works. We do 2 meetups a month, one on the first Thursday at Good Road and one on the third Tuesday at Salud Cerveceria, so we'd love to see you there. Come out. They've both got excellent types of beverages. We have great spaces to play games. We love it, and we would love to see you there.
And by the way, we post all these events on the Facebook page if you want to sign up for them and let us know that you're coming, or just have them on there so that Facebook reminds you, because Facebook is everywhere.
That is certainly true. Facebook is everywhere.
A little bit of show news. Our next episode, January 7th, will actually be our 2018 year in review. I'll be putting up the final round topic in just after we finish recording here today. So if you are looking to get in on an episode and have your voice heard on something, specific topic of 2018 that I have not yet decided, I will probably decide later today, jump into the Draft Mechanic Slack channel, and we will would love to hear from you there.
Well, actually, if you're not interested in Slack, or you don't have a phone that can support it, or you don't have a computer that can support it, or something, I don't know, if you don't want to join Slack, which is perfectly reasonable, we are also going to put up a thread on the Board Game Geek Guild for this final round, because we want to get as much input as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So you can check it out there as well.
Speaking of Board Game Geek, I did want to go back to that point you mentioned a little while ago about Board Game Geek having their annual fundraiser going on right now. This is something that I kind of am excited about every year, because I love supporting Board Game Geek. It's a resource that we use literally every single day in our particular line of hobby, I guess. Just, looking for resources, seeing the news, seeing what other people are rating and playing, and all the different guilds and stuff on there. So you have 10 days left as of time of recording, so I guess this ends on the 31st. What is today, the 22nd?
Today is the 22nd.
So you have about a week left as the time you're hearing this to get in on that. And for a minimum of $15 support, you can get the supporter badge and the Geek Gold bonus of 1,000 Geek Gold. Think of all the micro badgers you could be.
I don't think that's how that works.
One other little bit of games news I wanted to mention. Our friends over at Board and Dice put up some teaser artwork for Escape Tales 2, which is a scenario entitled Low Memory. We talked about Escape Tales a few episodes ago in our Gamers for Cures 24-hour our Gaming Marathon episode, and Escape Tales 2 is allegedly coming late next year, and it looks like this one is going to be a near-future cyberpunk and virtual reality scenario. How do you feel about this?
I mean, none of those things are particularly my bag, but I understand how they'll work really well with the Escape Tales system, and I'm interested to see what they're going to do with it. The art looks absolutely amazing, and I trust them to do this well. I know Escape Tales 1 will be joining us on our trip up for the holidays so that we can finish it off, because I'm really excited to get that done, and we will actually have some time to do it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm really, really excited about Escape Tales 2. I'm excited they're continuing to support this. I posted the image on our Instagram as well, and of course, if you go to Board and Dice's social media, you'll see it everywhere.
No way.
The art is the same artist that did the cover for The Awakening, and I'm just really excited to see such a really, different style as well in terms of the art, and just also freaking awesome. And
this one's also really bright.
Yeah.
It's really eye-catching when you see it, because The Awakening is a great game. The cover art is very well done, but it's a little bit darker. It doesn't there is a floating person on it, so it doesn't jump off the shelf if you see the cover of it. But if you just see the side of it, it's not really very bright or eye-catching. This one is super bright and eye-catching. It reminds me of a lot of the Overlight stuff that we have.
Yeah.
It's just that vibrant in color.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down with that. So it looks like that will be coming out sometime late next year. I'm sure we will talk about it when it does come around again, because I am 100% in on any and all future Escape Tales.
Okay, let's reel it in about that.
All right, Danielle, time to move on to Kickstarters. Would you like to give us the project updates from last episode?
Sure. Roll to the Top Laminate from Swally is finished at $25,000 of its $8,000 goal. It had 927 backers. Mm-hmm. The Final Flick Tier, which is still a dumb name.
It's a great name.
From Gabe Barrett, is funding at just over $12,000 of its $10,000 goal with 326 backers. This ends on Saturday, January 5th, so you've got a little bit of time left for backing that. It unlocked its first stretch goal, and that is upgraded card quality. So you're getting not necessarily more content, which a lot of people I know are not super fond of in Kickstarters. They're like, why isn't it in the game? Well, here you're just getting better stuff. Mm-hmm. That's good. Finally, the Art de Architecture Art from De Architecture Art finished at $71,000 of its $8,000 goal with 1,503 backers. It unlocked 11 stretch goals, including an upgrade to a hardcover, some additional maps, and 3 mega dungeons.
Yeah, I was looking through the stuff that they unlocked, and so these mega dungeons are big, poster-sized printouts, and they're giving you a nice folder for it and everything. It looks like this is going to be available from their web store later. So if you're just hearing about it now and you go to that Kickstarter page and you feel wistful that you did not get to back this thing, it looks like you'll be able to pick it up later.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's super cool. In terms of new projects, I only have one thing to talk about. This is always a kind of a downtime for Kickstarter, but I did want to mention this one project. It is Stonehenge and the Sun, and this is being done by Itten Games. Itten previously gave us Tokyo Highway that I've talked about a lot middle of the year.
Give us anything. No. You paid $50 for it.
I did pay $50. Anyway, so Tokyo Highway, a game that I really enjoy that was from Japan, that was very hard to get over here, and has actually just been released in the US. You can go to get it at Barnes & Noble with enough components for 4 players, plus all of the expansion content, which makes me very sad because it's a ton of stuff and I don't get it. But anyway, Stonehenge and the Sun is another one of these games that's really kind of odd to look at. It's wooden pieces, and you've got a circular base that you're going to be building what looks kind of like Stonehenge. You've got these wooden stone pieces, and on your turn, you're basically going to be placing a piece, and then you have to move your token around the outside of the board. But the catch is the sun part of this equation, because the sun is represented by a metal ball that you hang from the ceiling.
What?
Yeah, and after you place your piece, you have to swing the ball from one side to the other without hitting anything.
Why?
Yeah. I've intentionally not told you anything about this in the last 2 weeks because I wanted that reaction on audio. This is a weird freaking game.
So the idea is that the sun doesn't hit Stonehenge at all?
Well, okay, to be fair, there's been some abstractions throughout time, but of course, nobody really knows what Stonehenge is all about, other than rocks being stacked on rocks, and probably a sundial and or calendar. But this is a very strange and interesting game idea, and I will say, I'm going to put it up front here, this game is $56 to back, and $15 shipping. So you're paying $71 for this game that you have to suspend something from the ceiling.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I know you're not. Frankly, I'm not going to either, but I know that there are people out there that are interested in this kind of game. Eric from What's Eric Playing had a chance to do a preview of it, and he said it was a really interesting and exciting kind of experience, but obviously the price is going to be a sticking point for a lot of people, which has been true, I guess, for a lot of itten games in that they've had to be imported. This is the first one I've seen from them of this style that is on Kickstarter.
I'm just wondering, like, are they going to provide, like, a sort of structure to hang the thing from for demo? Because you're not going to be able to hang it from a convention ceiling. You're not going to be able to hang it from, like, a game store ceiling. Heck, we have 10-foot ceilings in our dining room. I'm not sure you're going to be able to hang it in the dining room.
Yeah, so what they're providing, you get an adhesive hook and a metal eyelet screw hook, if you want to commit to having it screwed into something, either your ceiling or a piece of wood that you want to create. And they do also in the Kickstarter link to a boom mic stand as an option as well. So while a stand is not provided for the ball, you do have the hooks and stuff if you do want to hook it onto something. Like in our dining room, for example, we'd probably just, tie it around the lamp or something.
Yeah, I'm just wondering for, like, promotional demo.
Like, yeah, okay.
That's going to be an issue. You can't set it up in a store because most stores have, like, 20, 30-foot ceilings because they're built-in enclosures, and you're not going to be able to bring it to a con. You're going to have to bring a mic stand, obviously, but...
They did actually have this on display at PAX Unplugged with a rig not unlike what you're talking about. They had kind of a wooden frame that was just kind of 2 8-foot, maybe 9-foot wooden beams with a cross beam above it, and they had the sun suspended from that. So they figured out a way to display it at cons. I didn't get a chance to play it just because that's how cons work when you're demoing half the time, but I got to see it in action a few times, and it does look really interesting, but the price point is really high.
Sorry, I might have missed this. How do you win this game?
Oh, you want to have the fewest pieces knocked over. Anytime you swing the ball and you knock over a piece, you take that as a negative point.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and there's more to it in terms of the way that you have to placement and where you can actually swing the ball through on your turn, that I would encourage you to go look at the Kickstarter page, because I don't fully understand it from reading through this morning, but basically you place a piece and then you have to move your personal token between that piece and another piece and then swing through from that side, and somebody on the other side has to catch it because you don't want to have swing backs. And then there's also the other version of the game, the Orbit mode. Would you like to know about Orbit mode?
I don't think I would, but tell me about it anyway.
In Orbit mode, you throw the ball in a way that it spins around the playfield in a circle and orbits around, and it's a speed game, and you have to stack 10 pieces without hitting the ball with your hands.
This ball is metal, right?
This ball is metal. They do recommend 14 and up for this game. So
yeah,
anyway,
but like 21 and under.
So anyway, this is Stonehenge in the Sun, and if this sounds interesting to you and you do have $71 to throw at it, I would encourage you to go take a look at it. I'm not going to be taking more than a look at it, probably, but it is a really interesting project that is gaming in a new kind of way.
That is true.
For that, I commend it. I'm always looking for somebody that's trying something new in games, and this is something new and weird.
Tetherball, the board game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is Stonehenge and the Sun. Well, that's all I got for you for Kickstarters. You want to go talk about birds?
Now let's talk about some t-shirts first. Want to wear your Draft Mechanic pride to your local brewery, board game meetup, or board game meetup at a brewery? Check out redbubble.com/people/draftmechanic for t-shirts.
Okay, can we talk about birds now?
Yes.
All right. First up, Songbirds, the 2018 release from Daily Magic Games that was originally released by Kochiya in Japan in 2016, it was. Mm-hmm. This plays 1 to 4 players in 20 minutes. It's designed by Yuo, with art by Kotore Neiko and Claire Donaldson. This is a game of area control, hand management, and fat little birds.
Yes, they're very, very cute. The first thing I want to say about this game is the artwork is absolutely adorable. I feel like that needs to be said right off the bat.
I'm all about some round little birds.
They are very good, especially that one little white bird who's upside down for some reason.
4 birds, what are you doing?
In Songbirds, you're going to be placing bird cards out onto a 5x5 grid of possible places to put your birds. And the object is, by the end of the game, you're going to have chosen a favored bird. And you want your favored bird to have gotten the most loud bird points, which are denoted by these little berry tokens, which are placed around the outside of the grid at the beginning of the game. As you complete each column or row by placing 5 birds in it, you will see which bird has the highest value of cards, meaning it is the loudest bird because they are volume levels, and whoever is the loudest bird will get the points token at the top of that column or at the side of that row. The trick is that if you've ever played Las Vegas, you're going to be really familiar with this scoring mechanism. If there is a tie for bird volume, the points actually go to the second loudest bird. And if there's a tie for second loudest as well, nobody gets those points. So you want to make sure that the bird that you selected as your favored bird is definitely the loudest, or if the other birds are tied, the second loudest. You're going to keep going until all of the rows and columns berries have been allocated, meaning the grid is full of 25 cards. And then whichever bird you've selected as your favorite bird, which, depending on which version of the game you're playing, will either be the last card left in your hand, or the bird that you've selected and placed face down on the table at some point during the game, you will acquire all of the points that bird got in very loud points. You want to have the most of those because you want to be the loudest bird. There are a couple of variants, like I mentioned, about this. If you're playing with 4 players, instead of having all of the grid cards open, you will be placing a special bird in the center before you start, which is going to give, depending on which one you select, either positive or negative points to the bird which is the loudest in a specific direction from that central card. So that's going to add a little bit of complication and a little bit of complexity to your placement. There's also a solo version where you're going to start with some birds seated on the board, and you are attempting to get the score of your favorite bird to be higher than the total score of all the other birds, and how much higher will determine how well you've done in the game. At the end, you want to be a very loud, good bird.
I'm very proud of myself for not making bird noises throughout that description.
I'm also very proud of you. Thank you.
Hey, I'm growing as a person in 2019.
But you're shrinking as a bird.
One of my goals is to make less bird noises on the show, I guess. I don't know. This is a deceptively brain-burning game, and I felt that the most when we played 2 players last night. With 2 players, you are going to really just be focusing exactly on what the other player is playing, in what direction, and what, kind of points they're trying to get. Because these point tokens around the outside, I think they go from like 6 to 15.
5 to 15, but
so,
not every number, obviously.
Yeah. So there's, everybody's going to be fighting for that 15 row and really just trying to manage when you can even get to that row, because you can only place birds next to birds that already exist on the table. I guess because birds can't fly, or they're very friendly to other birds. One of those things can be your thematic reason.
Because it's a good game.
But in a 2-player game, I didn't realize how much I would have to think about what cards could be in your hand. We have one card that's not in anybody's hand, which is the real twist about it, is that, for the example, you had, I think, 6 out of the 7 blue cards in your hand. Mm-hmm. Something like that. I had one of them. I had the 4. And throughout the game, you were really angling for blue and trying to get good blue points because you wanted to obviously have all the most bluebird points.
It was really the only thing I could manipulate really well. Like, I had some green cards in my hand, and I think maybe 1 white and 2 red. Mm-hmm. But I had a lot of power of manipulation over what points blue got, so that's what I was going for.
And I had a similar situation. I had 5 of the white cards in my hand, and I think the other card that wasn't there that was our starting card, was the white card or something like that. But I had spent most of the game really looking at it as, well, she's got such a huge control over blue, she's obviously going to get this. But there was a point about a third of the way through the game where I realized that, okay, I don't have to commit to what I started with. I decided I was going to start with the white and start working my way through, but it got to the point where I started setting up rows specifically so that you had to play high blue cards. And then it turned out that I was the only one with the blue card left in my hand by the end. I had the 4. Well, you had I guess
had
a 2
blue
or
cards.
something.
They were just low value. I had 1, 2, and 3.
And on the surface, it doesn't seem like you would get to that level of, I think you did this, so I'm going to do this, but you think I'm going to do this, so on and so forth, with such a simple set of cards. You've got, 28 cards that you're playing with in this entire game.
Yeah, you tricked me good on this one.
And that's kind of how I felt as I was playing the solo one as well. I was really having to think about, okay, well, what cards are left, and how is this going to impact what I have in my hand? If I play in this row, I'm going to be forced to play this card over here. It's a surprisingly deep strategic decision you have to make, especially about a third of the way through the game as you start getting more and more information.
I absolutely love this as a solo game, and frankly, while I do love playing it at 2 players, and we played it at 4 players, that was also really fun. I haven't played it at 3 players yet, but I imagine it would be fairly similar to 2 because the rules are the same for 2 and 3, and then they change at 4 to add that central card which modifies the bird values in any specific direction. But I really love this at solo. I think this is how I'm going to be playing it a lot.
Yeah.
Like I said, you start with some birds seated out on the board. So there is some aspect of the placement that you really can't control, because what comes out in that placement of those first 9 cards is going to determine how you can manipulate the values in the rows. But also, it's so tight because you are trying to get your bird's score higher than all of the other birds' scores. And it's very easy to end up with negative points, which is essentially losing. But like the first time I got positive points, and then I got like 11 points, and it's still amateur according to the scoring table. By the way, I have no idea how you're supposed to get like 50 something points on the scoring table. You'd have to get all of the berries and have a very high card bird for your last card. But like I got 11 points and I felt really good about it. I was like, okay, how can I learn to do this and do it better? You have to really manipulate the values so that even if you can't win a row, everything else is even so that you get it in second place. I really like the puzzle that playing this game solo is. There's a little bit of luck based on where the berries are. You know, maybe the row that has a nice easy thing for you to win isn't the most valuable row, and the row that is the most valuable has been seeded with some higher cards from another color that you don't really want to have chosen or whatever. There is a little bit of luck in it, but it's the kind of thing where when you finish it, you just want to shuffle the cards up, re-deal out the berries, and go again.
Yeah. I think that getting the second place win, having 2 other numbers or 2 other birds tie, is going to be the only way to get those high scores.
Oh, definitely.
And I just it's the kind of thing that I'm thinking about the puzzle and the strategy well after playing this 15-minute card game. So yeah, really sharp design. And in case you have any kind of confusion on it, this is Songbirds from Daily Magics. Peepmots is another game that has a very similar cover, and I feel like we should mention it because it's also
that similar.
It's called Little Songbirds, and it's easy to, type in Songbirds and grab the first bird you see. But if you get both birds, then you have a lot of birds. Anyway, this is Songbirds, and it's a brain burner.
Indeed.
Brain birder. Yeah?
Yeah, brain birder.
All right. Danielle, moving on.
Next, we're going to talk about Azul, Stained Glass of Sintra, which is a 2018 release from Next Move Games, which is an imprint of Plan B, right? Mm-hmm. This is 2 to 4 players and plays in 30 to 45 minutes. The designer is Michael Kiesling and the artist is Chris Quilliams. This is a game of tile placement, pool management, and being very Azul all over again.
Yeah, it is very Azul. And it's also very not Azul at the same time, and I'm kind of going to go through it in the description here. Just to kind of lead this off, I originally thought we were going to end up doing this as a 6-pack review, but we did Azul as a 6-pack review a year ago, and it's kind of a similar game, so I kind of just wanted to get it over and move on with it at this point. So Azul Stained Glass of Sintra, if you have played basic Azul, it has some similar mechanics. You have tiles of 5 different colors.
Starbursts.
Yeah, well, they're Hall's Mentholyptus in this one.
Ooh.
And you're going to be laying them out in sets of 4 on these factory tiles, depending on the number of players. In a 4-player game, you have 9 factory tiles, and you put 4 of them on each at the beginning of the round. Just like in regular Azul, on your turn, you're going to choose to take all of one color from one of the factory tiles, or once you've filled up the middle with some discarded tiles, you'll be pulling all of one color from the center as well. Anything you don't take off your factory tile slides into the center, become that discard-ish area, and then you're going to take those tiles and place them on your personal player board. So far, this sounds exactly like regular Azul. Mm-hmm. The way it differs is in the way that your personal player board exists. In basic Azul, you're going to be filling up rows of 1 to 5 of, whatever color you want to be, and then filling out your big tile board. But in Stained Glass of Sintra, you have 7 columns that are each their own individual kind of long tile that have a fixed group of colors on them. Maybe you'll have one that's 5 yellow or 3 pink and 2 blue, something like that. And you're going to choose which one to place them on. You must place all of the tiles that you take onto the same vertical window pane, I guess is what it is, or window frame. And once that is filled up, you will score that particular window frame. It gets a little bit more complicated in terms of placement because you also have this glazier meeple that is going to be up at the top of your 7 window pane tiles. You can only place the tiles that you take on the one below your glazier or to the right of your glazier. So as you are working your way through, anytime you place tiles to the right of your glazier, you must move your glazier to that one, kind of reducing the ones that you have the option to place on. You must, instead of taking tiles on one of your turns, for an action you can move your glazier all the way back to the left, therefore opening up all the options again. Once you've scored out one of those column tiles, you're going to take one of the tiles and place it on your bottom kind of big window board that kind of represents you've finished this particular pane of this window. And you will flip over that long tile and then have another set on the other side.
The bottom is sort of like the right side of the board in regular Azul, where you store your completed stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And once you've filled it the second time, you're actually going to discard that full strip, and it's basically you've completed that window. Hooray. Scoring in Stained Glass of Sintra is also a little different than it is in Classic Azul. Unlike the kind of Scrabble-ish scoring in Azul that when you place a tile, you get points for horizontal and vertical row of connected tiles, this one is actually done in two different ways. First, there is a specific color tile each round. The game lasts a fixed 6 rounds. And if your window pane, when completed, has any of that particular tile in it, you score 1 point per tile of whatever color it is. And then also, you will score based on a value printed on your base board at the bottom, depending on what window you finish. So, for example, the one furthest to the left is worth 4 points when you finish it, and then I think 3, and then 2, and then there's some 1s, and then the final one is worth 2 as well. The way that this gets interesting is that once you place tiles on your bottom board, having finished one of the 2 different windows in a particular column, anytime you score anything to the left of it, you will score those points again. So, for example, if I score the 1-pointer that's halfway in my board, but I've already finished out the 1 and the 2-pointer near the end of the board, I will score an additional 1 and 2 points. So in this way, you're both kind of encouraged to finish the ones to the far right earlier on so that you get those points multiple times, but the ones on the far left of your board that you have to send your glazier all the way back to the left to make it, get tiles on that again, are the ones that are worth the biggest points, but you're only going to score them a few times. It's a really interesting back and forth mechanic that I'm sure we'll talk about more in the gameplay here. Finally, depending on if you're using the A or B side of the board, you will have some endgame scoring. The B side of the board is complicated in that you take the number of completed windows that you have times whatever color you choose you have the most of on the bottom. And then the A side is really just kind of a how many around in this square of 4 have you completed. I think it's, the one most people are going to play with. But like I said, the game will go for 6 rounds. Each round goes until all of the tiles have been distributed. And that is Azul Stained Glass of Sintra.
This feels like another edition in what we've seen a couple of times before, where very simple, well, I guess not very simple, but simple gateway games get a second sort of updated edition that adds something a little bit more either gamery or complex, however you want to describe it. We saw it with King of Tokyo, which got King of New York, which added a couple of new mechanisms. We saw it with King Domino, which got Queen Domino, which added an absolute boat ton of new mechanisms. And here, Azul Stained Glass of Sintra definitely feels like it has more going on than Azul does, especially if you play Azul with the color printed side of the board. This adds monitoring where that glazier is, because he's very important. If you move him all the way to the right, you are going to be really limiting the options that you have, and there may be a really good tile combination that you want to take from the board, or more importantly, that you want to keep somebody else from taking from the factories in the center. But if you don't have the space in your windows to place it, then you can't take that, or you can, and you'll lose a ton of points, because just like in regular Azul, if you take little tiles that you can't place, or window panes, I guess in this case, that you can't place, they are going to impact your score negatively. In this game, instead of like in Azul where each round you get a fresh start with your broken panes, in this game, when you have tiles that you can't place in a window that you have under or to the right of your glazier, you're going to throw them into this sort of little 3-dimensional bin that's got windows printed around it. That's pretty cute. I like it. It's a nice little storage thing as opposed to the box lid. And you are going to move your negative points cube further along the negative points track. which starts out the first time you break a window pane, only 1 negative point.
They're not that mad at you yet.
No, but the second time it's -2. The third time it's -4. You can go all the way down to -18, I think it is. And if you keep going, you just leave that cube on -18 and cycle and keep going. You accrue -19 the next time, and then
Well, yeah.
and then -20, and then -22, and then it keeps going again. So you can't be taking tiles that you can't place. It's also not going to score you any points, so it's wasteful. But you do really need to be careful of it. Also, when you take the first player tile, like in Azul, that's going to give you a negative thing. And what it does in this turn is it moves you 1 down on that track, which at the beginning of the game, no problem, -1 point. If you're farther down on the track, it could be 2 or 3 points difference that taking that first player tile gives you. So you really need to be careful of that. But making sure that you have the options on your windows to place what you'd like to place is a really interesting puzzle that was not in the original. I mean, I guess it was in a little way. It was in Azul being like you can't make the same color in the row 4 twice.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can't do that. But I think it's much more complicated in this game.
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect with the second Azul, just because, anytime you see the re-implementation, you're just like, oh, this is going to be, the same thing. And I find enough different about Stained Glass of Sintra to make me want to play both of them. I don't think everybody needs both in their collection. I'm not sad to have both in the collection because I definitely feel I would pull them out at different times. I enjoy the way that the Glacier limits what you can do a lot. And that's the real exciting part of this to me, is that playing through this game, I've found points where, oh, well, I really wish I could take this stuff, but I have to move back all the way to the left first, and then I'm probably going to miss out on getting that a second time, so I'm going to take this second less great option, but at least it's doing something, and I keep making that compromise until my Glacier is all the way to the right, and I'm just like, well, I guess I'm resetting this time because I have nothing else I can do. And it's a fun puzzle to play with. I do also really like the component upgrades in this one. I like the little glass tower discard thing a lot. I really enjoy that. I like the tiles in this one just because they're slightly different.
I'm fine with them.
I will say for color blindness, it will be a big issue, except for the fact that the backs of the factory tiles, this is kind of interesting, the backs of the factory tiles have printed sections on them for each of the 5 colors. So one player who's not colorblind can set up them on the correct spot. And then they also have one highlighted for each of the central spaces. So you can continue to, place them in groups in the central space.
What about the player board, though?
Yeah, I don't know.
Once you take them out of the factory, that's not really going to help.
You are 100% correct about that. But I do like that they tried some.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that and you had pointed this out to me, I didn't initially see it. Since the window panes are two-sided rather, there is a little icon up at the top, which is like a little side light part at the top, that tells you what's on the other side, so that when you flip over that window pane, you know what you're going to be needing for the second window. That's not going to be particularly colorblind friendly, I don't think.
No, not at all.
It's very small, so if you're not great at colors to start with.
Yeah, no, very true. Well, they tried, they got one part, and I guess you just rely on one other person to help you out.
Yeah, but I mean, they took off the colorblind markings on the actual tiles themselves.
Yeah,
so
that is a bummer. So what I would say about Stained Glass of Sintra is that if you haven't enjoyed Azul and you want something that is a fresh take on that mechanic of the tile placement and the factory tiles, I would encourage you to give it a play. I'm happy that we have it. I enjoy it. I'll probably continue to play both of these for years to come. If you are perfectly content with Azul and you play it once, you don't need Stained Glass of Sintra. And if you have neither, play them both, and maybe one will be a little more up your alley if you want something a little meatier, or if you want something a little better to, teach as the gateway level.
I agree. I would happily play either of these games. I don't think you need to own both of them. So if you do own Azul, and that's fine, I don't think you need to run out and buy this. But we have both.
Yeah.
I also do want to touch really quickly. This game, just for thematic reasons, always gets a little bit of comparison to Sagrada because they're both about stained glass window manufacturing, of which there are very few games. I don't feel like that comparison is warranted. These games, while they are both about placement, are very, very different games. Azul Stained Glass of Sintra is very much a follow-up to Azul, which is a different game from Sagrada. And The only real similarity is they both have clear jewel tone markers and their placement games about windows. They're not the same game. So if you do have Sagrada and you're like, well, is this going to be a double of that? No, it's not.
No. And I don't feel bad having all three of these games because all three of them do awesome things in different ways. In my opinion.
That's fine. Yeah.
Well, that is Azul, Stained Glass of Sintra. It is apparently available on your shelves now. Finally, in recent plays, we have Gizmos, the 2018 release from Simon Limited. This is 2 to 4 players, 40 to 50 minutes, designed by Phil Walker Harding. It has art by Hannah Cardoso, Julia Ferrari, Giovanni Guimares, Matthew Harlow, and Saeed Jalabi. This is a game of card drafting, engine building, and surprisingly light marbles in a 3D thingy.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it is.
They're light? I guess
they
are.
They're not actually made of glass. They're made of like a lighter plastic. So when you go to pick them up, they don't feel like you expect marbles to feel if you've ever felt actual marbles. No, I mean, it makes sense. They have to ship it. So
ship me glass marbles that can break.
Well, not only that, but you want it to be lighter.
Yes.
Anyway, that's not how you play the game.
Throw marbles at each other.
No.
Gizmo. Wham.
In Gizmos, you are very much building your engine to try and get the most points. Imagine that.
I don't understand. Points?
Points.
Okay.
From your Gizmos. The neat thing about this game is that anytime you make progress, you are making your engine much stronger. What you're doing in this game is you are taking marbles that you are drawing out of the Marble Machine 3D Gizmo thingy that you are taking out from a trough. So if you've ever seen Potion Explosion, where it's got multiple troughs of marbles, well, there's just one coming out of this one, but it's got an open top. And you're going to be taking marbles either from that display row or from the open top, depending on what type of action you are selecting for your turn. And you're going to use those marbles to pay the cost to build gizmos that are out that you can draft from the tableau. You can also take some of those gizmos and file them to build later once you've drawn additional marbles. And each of the gizmos, once you build them, is going to increase the power of a specific action that you can take. So building a low-cost machine may allow you to draw an additional marble out of the top of the machine every time you draw a specific color marble. So, if you take a red out of that trough in the front, maybe you get to draw an extra one out of the top blind. So you don't know what you're going to get, but you are getting more resources. There are gizmos that allow you to convert one color marble to any other color marble, which is going to be really useful because some of these gizmos require, 5 to 7 marbles to complete. So you're probably not going to be able to draw from that trough all of that color that you want because people aren't going to let you take all the color you want. There are also gizmos that give you additional points or marble draws when you build specific colors of machines, or when you file a machine to build it later, or when you build from your file. Really, the gizmos that you can build make everything that you can do more powerful. You're going to keep playing until a certain number of the high-value gizmos have been built, or, more likely, one player builds 16 different gizmos in their tableau. And then you're going to count up the number of points that you have from all of your gizmos, because building better gizmos gives you more points. Any points tokens that you've earned from the powers that you got throughout the game, and the person who has the most points is going to be the winner.
The most points?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, if you say so.
I do say so.
So, gizmos. A lot of people drew a lot of Potion Explosion comparisons in the beginning because it's from CMON and it has a big cardboard thingy with balls, but they are not even remotely similar kinds of games. You're drawing balls out of a cardboard thing, so in that way it's 100% similar, right?
Sort of.
I was drawn to this game initially. We played this back in Seattle at Mox Boarding House just because I wanted to see some cool engine building. And I will say, this game has cool engine building. You're going to be escalating your engine dramatically over the course of the game. But it's kind of just that, and I didn't feel super thrilled about what I was doing with that engine other than building more engine. You know what I mean? Like, there's no second part to it that I use my engine for other than building engine. And I think that's kind of where it falls for me. I want to do something with an engine beyond add more pieces to it.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like this game doesn't really have that sort of payoff that you want from a really cool engine builder. When you get a really good engine builder, And the one that obviously always jumps to mind for me when I talk about a really good card-based engine builder is going to be Terraforming Mars, which is a very different level of game from Gizmos, but has the point I'm trying to make. When you get an engine going that works really well, you feel at the end of it like you did something cool at the end of a good turn. And in Gizmos, I don't necessarily feel like I did something cool at the end of my turn. It was just like, oh, I drew a red marble, and that allowed me to draw blind, and then the marble I converted blind, I could turn that into a different color, and then I built the thing that I saved from before, which doesn't actually do anything for me. It just gives me a couple of points. And it didn't really feel rewarding. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's just it not resonating with me, or if it's just because there's engine building to no real goal beyond having a really good engine. I don't know. Every time I played this game, I just came away with it feeling like it was a forgettable game, which I feel bad saying, but is the truth.
Yeah, and it is in that kind of space where if you want to teach somebody how engine building works, this would be a good one to have for that, because it will show you how, to build an engine and how to think about, okay, if I'm going down this track, I want more pieces of this particular kind of thing. And obviously the production is very good. You got this cool marble hopper, and you get to play with putting the balls in places. You got fun rings, and the cards are nicely illustrated. So it's attractive in that way. And the gameplay is airtight. I just want more gameplay, I guess. That's just where I am in games right now, that I want to do something with this engine beyond build it.
I do want to say that there are some really interesting and really helpful gameplay mechanics that make this a good game about engine building. And like you said, you can teach it. There is a research action that you can take that allows you to dig through one of the piles of cards to look for something that is more valuable for you. Sort of like the Draw 5+, if you've ever played Race for the Galaxy, that allows you to deep dive in the pile. Because this is drawing off the options that are in front of you most of the time, you can get frustrated if the stuff in front of you doesn't work with what you've got built in your engine or with the marbles that are out there. But there is an option to sort of dig and get something that's better for you. And there are those converters that allow you to take the resources that you've drawn and change them into different things. So I do think it really nicely handles the possibility that the things available to you might not work within the engine that you've built, which is something that is very important for an engine builder. If you can just be absolutely screwed over just because what came out isn't working as well for you as for somebody else, I think it takes a lot of the fun out of it. It's why we play Terraforming Mars with drafting as opposed to just random cards.
Yeah.
And I think that they've nicely handled that aspect. So it is a well-designed game. It's just not one that I'm loving.
Yeah, kind of how I feel about Gizmos as well. I will say I'm kind of interested, and we're between this episode and next episode, the pre-orders will go up for Stonemaier Games' latest game, Wingspan, which Jamie Stegmaier has said if you like Gizmos or Terraforming Mars, you might be interested in Wingspan. So I'm guessing, and I'm hoping, that we get an engine-building game that's in that space between, that's not going to be a 3-hour, Terraforming Mars experience, which we love, no question, but something more meaningful and more productive than what I got out of Gizmos. Mm-hmm. So that goes up January 2nd, I think, for pre-orders. This is designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, and I'm sure we will talk about it at some point in the beginning of the year. But keep an eye out for that if you like engine building, I guess. A little surprise game news there at the end of the recent plays.
Yes.
All right, let's go on a journey. A journey to a magical city, one made of gears.
Oh.
Yeah, gears?
Yeah. I get it.
All right, segue.
Over the past year, we, with the help of Gunnar the Viking Leader, have talked to you about tons of great games from Grey Fox Games. From expansions to Champions of Midgard and Deception Murder in Hong Kong, to new releases like Harvest Dice, Bushido, Rising 5, Multi-Universum, and Pocket Mars, and even a new reloaded edition of Run, Fight, or Die. Grey Fox Games has been bringing you fantastic experiences to share with your friends and family.
We look forward to another year of sharing what Grey Fox Games is up to with you, including the upcoming City of Gears and Reavers of Midgard, and tons more. Check it out for yourself and sign up for their newsletter at greyfoxgames.com.
Grey Fox Games, quality games, cleverly crafted.
So for our six-pack review, the final six-pack review of 2018, we have City of Gears, a release from our sponsor, Grey Fox Games. And I do also want to mention that if you're interested in hearing another opinion on this game, the Mile High Game guys, our friends and Punchboard Media cohorts, also did a review last Friday. So if you want even more content about City of Gears, you can listen to it there. And I will say up front that neither of us planned to do this at the same time as the other. It's just kind of the way that worked out. This game delivered to both of us at the same time, and we're both really excited to talk about it. So, yeah.
In fairness, if I know anything about the Mile High Game Guys reviews, it's probably 3 different opinions, not one additional opinion.
Very true. So, Danielle, you want to give us the stats for City of Gears?
Sure. City of Gears is a 2018 release from Grey Fox Games, as you just said, that plays 2 to 4 players in, they are estimating 45 minutes, but that is garbage.
We can get to that.
The designers are Chris Leader and Daryl Andrews, and the artists are Anthony Cornoyer, Chris Leader, and Tyler Myatt. This is a game of area control, route building, and zapping them robot mans.
Zap them. Pew, chew, 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 chew. Yeah.
Jake, do you think you can tell us how to play City of Gears?
I don't know. I'm not super familiar with the rules to this one, but I'll give it my best. All right. All jokiness aside, I did demo this game for 12 hours at PAX Unplugged, so you're about to get the true Jake demoing a game experience.
This
as
better
best
be
as
good.
it is. All right, so in City of Gears, you actually have a game that comes in 3 different parts. First, the first third of it is exploration. As you're going out into the City of Gears, you have these tiles that are face down at the beginning of the game. You have a 3x3 grid of city tiles. On the back of each of those tiles is some kind of machinery that has been laying dormant there for years. You and all of your other cohorts are entrepreneurs that are working to rebuild the City of Gears to open it up to the public as an amusement park. So the second, I believe that's the theme. So the second third of the game is kind of an engine building and chaining function. As you're discovering more and more of these tiles by flipping them over, you're going to be discovering machines that do cool things, and you're going to be building links between those tiles so that when you activate one, you get bonuses off the others. The final third of the game is an area control game, where by the end of the game, you need to get yourself in the best position with both your workers and those gear links that you've built between the tiles, so that when the hammer drops and the game ends, you're going to have your stuff in the best position to get bonus points off of each of those 9 tiles in the city. So playing a round of City of Gears is very simple. You roll your dice in the beginning, and the dice are going to show you the resources that you have to work with. There's 3 basic resources in this game. You have Steam, which is a cloud. That's basically a point of movement that you're going to be able to use to move one of your workers off of your factory board and one tile, so on and so forth. We have cogs that will allow you to draw cogs out of the bag. There's a cloth bag in this game that has a bunch of these little plastic gears in there, and these gears, or cogs, I'm going to say both of those things interchangeably.
We know that cogs and gears are not the same things. Cogs are the teeth on gears. Please don't tell us about that.
Really?
Yeah, okay, one of us knew that.
Well, there you go. So, gears. Anyway, you'll be drawing gears out of the bag, depending on how many of those particular gear resources you have in that turn. And then the final one is Zap, which is a lightning bolt, and you're going to use this for a bunch of different things. It's only 1 out of the 6 dice faces on your die, but it can do a whole bunch of different things. First, it's a kind of like a super movement that you can move your worker as far as you can along the board across all of your gear links. You can also spend 1 Zap to destroy an opponent's worker that's on the same tile as one of your workers, or 2 Zap to destroy one of their gear links attached to the tile that one of your workers occupies. All of these resources are also going to be used to activate the city tiles. So I said that the middle of this game is about engine building, and you're going to be doing this in a few different ways. One, at the beginning of your turn after you roll your dice, you have the opportunity to activate tiles that your workers are on. Each one has a specific requirement. Maybe it requires a worker to be there and you have to spend a gear resource, or maybe it requires 2 steam resources and your worker. But they're all going to have different powers, because in the 27 different tiles in the game, every single one of them is unique and they have different functions and features. Some might allow you to trade resources in an interesting way, or manipulate your opponent's pieces or your pieces in a fun way, or just get a whole boatload of points depending on what particular board setup there is. There's a lot of variability in the way that it's set up, and we can talk about all that stuff later. You also have engine building in this game with those gears that you're pulling out of the bag. Like I said, you're going to pull as many gears as you want for the number of gear resources you spend, be it on your dice or on some resource tokens that I'll talk about in a bit. But no matter how many gear tokens that you pull, if you pull 3, for example, because you spend all 3 and you must spend them all at the same time to pull all at once, you're going to have to make a choice. Those gears, in addition to being links between tiles, that you place them in these nice little die-cut spaces between the tiles, or you can use them also as kind of an engine building mechanic on your personal factory, because every single one of those gears has a unique power on them. And these are additional converters. Maybe it allows you to convert a zap into 2 steam, or maybe it gives you the ability to use somebody else's gears or some endgame points that you're going to want to work throughout the whole game. No matter how many you draw, you can assign a maximum of one of them to your personal factory board and one of them out into the main city as a gear link between 2 tiles. Any extra ones that you get will be discarded, not back into the bag, but off to the side, and I'll tell you why that's important in a little bit.
Bye.
So I said the area control is going to be very important. You need your people in the right places, because when the hammer drops, it's going to just kind of come at you all of a sudden. But I need to tell you why that's true. Once you've explored all of the city tiles in that city, you're going to throw in these 4 opening day white gears into the cloth bag. This is important because you, as different entrepreneurs, are restoring this city to make this amusement park, and opening day is drawing near. Those white gears represent the approach of opening day, and once 3 of those white gears are drawn out of the bag, the game is going to end immediately. And this is a big surprise to a lot of people, and I saw this a lot when I was demoing, that people didn't expect how variable that ending section of the game is going to be, because once that gear is drawn, when the 3rd one is drawn, the game ends immediately. No finishing your turn, no placing any gears that you've pulled so far. You don't even get to spend the final bit of your resources. It's over immediately. And I have once seen somebody pull all 3 of the white gears in a row, because anytime you pull a white one, you get to replace it because you didn't actually get to use that one. So
Sounds
the
like
ending,
you should have shuffled the bag a little better.
so the ending of this game is going to be really about focusing your people in the right places, getting your worker in the right places, so when that comes, you're in the best position. Each of those tiles is going to be worth roughly 3 to 5 points per tile, so in a 2 or 3 player game, that's a huge chunk of points up for grabs there. And once that 3rd white gear is drawn, the game is going to end immediately. You're going to count up all of your points from the area control, any other ones that you've gained throughout the game, and also any end game gears that you have in your engine, and whoever has the most points will be the most prestigious restorer of the City of Gears.
Huzzah!
So how was that? Did I do a pretty good job explaining that game?
So good.
All right, so City of Gears has been in development for a long time, and I've actually had a chance to play this a lot over the last few years. Obviously, we're connected with Grey Fox Games, and I'm friends with the team over there, so I had an opportunity to play it about a year ago as it was in development, and I gotta say, the final product that we got is pretty much what I had been playing with Josh and Alex back in the day. That ending is still there, and it keeps you really focused on developing your area control and getting your workers out onto the board, because you never know when that ending is going to come, and it's always a surprise. That was one thing that I saw again and again when I was doing demos of this at PAX Unplugged.
I know a couple of the games that we've played with our groups, people have drawn 2 white gears in the same turn.
Mm-hmm.
Again, possibly a shuffling issue, possibly just luck. Because, I mean, you could shuffle all you want and still just draw 2 of those white gears. And when you do that, it definitely changes the way you play the rest of the game. If they're the first 2 white gears, everything from that first turn after everything's been discovered it could be your last turn. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you've already got 1 gear out, knowing that you could pull 2 or even all 3, but if you've already got 1 out, knowing you can pull 2 white gears and that it's not unheard of, definitely makes you think about your long-term planning as opposed to what you can get out of turns sooner.
Yeah, it's a really interesting ending mechanic, and I had obviously the opportunity as I was demoing this to see a lot of different games, and I was really interested in the way that the ending of this game changed how everybody played it. I had one game where 4 people that were playing super aggressively with each other, having a lot of fun with it, they stopped pulling gears for 3 rounds just because they wanted to beat each other up and try to get that best area control placement. And I thought that was a really awesome function of this game. And I also had groups that were very solitaire players that still, would zap each other a little bit here and there, but they didn't really go after it, and they still had a good time with it.
That being said, take that in this game, you may destroy, or just it's called destroying, but you may destroy another person's robot worker, but it just gets sent back to your factory. You never have to rebuild a worker, even if it's one of the ones that you built off your board. Mm-hmm. It just goes back and it's ready for use on your next turn. So take that, you can destroy gears. Those can always be replaced on a future turn, but your robots are never going to go. You're never going to be at a disadvantage because somebody was doing take that to you to say that you have fewer workers than somebody else. So it is sort of a nice take that, I feel like.
Yeah, it is nice that you don't have to, again, spend those resources to get stuff back out there. And you just, honestly, by that point in the game, you're probably getting flush with resources.
The other thing that I noticed about the fact that it had a variable endgame, it meant that the endgame scoring gears that you pull out of the bag are useful from the jump. Like, you're pulling gears out of the bag, and if you're pulling at least 2 on your turn, you'll likely be able to put 1 into your factory and 1 out on the board, because you can never put more than 1 in either of those 2 locations on a turn. So as long as you're pulling 2, you essentially have to decide which one you'd like to keep for the power and which one you'd like to put out on the board and negate the power and just make it your color link. And in a lot of games, there is a point when you decide to go from this power allows me to make my engine run more smoothly to this power is going to get me points at the end of the game. This game doesn't have that tipping point because any turn could be the end of the game. So early on, you need to consider, if I pull this end game gear and it could give me 6 or 8 points at the end of the game, that's worth it for me to keep. And maybe I don't have as many powers to give me a little bit more versatility, but 8 points at the end of the game in this game is a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we were playing 2 players, and the scores obviously go up when you have fewer players because that's just how numbers work.
There's more space.
But even when we were playing 2 players, 8 points would have been a tenth of your score.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep that.
I really feel that the way that the end game comes in this game is one of the most exciting parts about this game. As I was demoing it and talking with players and seeing their reactions, just the knowledge that at any point that game could end really brought a lot of urgency to everything you're doing in the last half of the game. One thing I will say is that it does also mean that your 45 minutes, quote unquote, can be super volatile. And we can talk about this as we get deeper into the gameplay discussion, but I saw games go 30 minutes and I saw games go well over an hour just because of the way that that end game works. You get to the point where you're throwing in the white gears pretty quickly because everybody wants to go out and explore. That's really exciting to flip over and see what kind of stuff there is. But I can also see people being frustrated if this game ends super quickly.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, there were some games where people pulled 2 white gears on their first turn. And one of the game nights we had this out, that happened on the first game, and then 3 of the same 4 players were playing on our second game, and the same thing happened, and we just threw one of them back in. We were just like, okay, let's just say you drew 1, because the folks who had played the first game got a very short game, and they wanted to sort of see what the game had to offer a little more. So instead of resetting the whole thing back up, which would have just been kind of annoying, we just threw it back in, which is not a game-sanctioned thing to do, but you're an adult. Figure it out.
You can do it. I trust you, dear listener. So this is a good logical point to kind of go back into the components and production of this. So I feel the production of this game is overall very good. I like the thick city tiles. I feel like the die-cut shapes where you're putting the gears and the gears actually kind of snap in almost between city tiles is really cool. The gear tiles are really cool. They're these plastic chunky gears, and they're labeled on one side with the power. They're all unique, and I think that's a big positive for the game. And your little player tokens, they fit nicely into the tokens there. There are some things about it that do kind of bug me, though. And we've talked about this a good bit, and we actually went back and looked at the Kickstarter page. It looks like everything was just like printed darker or less colorful than
the colors
they
are definitely
wanted.
Not as vibrant as I kind of wish they were. It looks a little muted, almost like SimCity 2000, which is not a great visual look in 2018. But yeah, there's a gray background that all the buildings are printed on. All the reds are really more of a maroon color, and the greens are a darker color. Even the blues are pretty dark. Whereas the box cover is super vibrant, and it's got sort of a cartoony style of art. And all the colors are really nice and bright. When you look at the tiles out in front of you, it feels grayer than it should.
And I feel like there's a good bit of weirdness with the iconography as well. We talked about one particular one, an icon for development, which refers to cogs that you put into your engine at the bottom of your player board, which is a blue sheet of
There's
like
nothing
construction
blue about
paper.
them.
Yeah, there's nothing particularly about that. And frankly, I feel like the fact that I learned in a demo scenario and was talking with, obviously the team and learning everything, so I was able to respond to that, kind of buffered me away from having the confusion and the frustration there.
It's not labeled on the player boards either, which I think is what makes it confusing. If they had put that icon down in the section where you put those gears, because there's definitely a whole section where that goes, and there's nothing else there on your board. It's got the cutouts so the gears can slot in, and that's what that section is for. If that icon were there, it would at least transfer that from the tiles or the gears that you're drawing to be like, oh, that coordinates with this. But it's not labeled in any way, so you just pull out a gear and it's got a blue sheet of paper and you're like, I don't have anything that looks like this. I don't know what this is. I'm not going to use it.
Yeah.
And one of those, at least one of them, is like you get a point for every 2 of the gears that you have on your board. If you use that every turn, you're talking about like 10 points throughout the course of the game at least. And that's something you really might want to have. It's very useful. But if you didn't know what it meant, you might just put it onto the board and put your marker token on top of it as a gear whose power you can't use just because you don't know what it is.
Another thing that came up pretty frequently in demoing, the the steam resource is a cloud of steam, and the red player's player icon is a cloud, and they look almost exactly the same, except for the fact that one is red and one is, we have the wooden tokens. I think it's blue or something for that particular resource on the cardboard chits. But it's just a lot of oddness there that I would encourage you, if you do get into this game, really read through the rulebook and read through Board Game Geek just to clarify stuff so that you know coming in how you're going to teach it.
Can we also talk about the robot sculpts?
Let's talk about the robot sculpts, Dee.
They have weak ankles.
So the Kickstarter edition of this game, which is what we have, is been upgraded with wooden tokens for the resource, which are pretty cool. I like those. And it also has little, robot miniatures, but the miniatures' legs are kind of small, and they are definitely leaning over and back and forth and stuff like that, which is, I guess, what you get when you have really thin miniatures.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I like the sculpts. They're fun. Yeah. They're little round robot men, and they're cute. But some of them definitely look like they're about to fall over. I think if you're getting this and you get the wooden meeples that the regular version of this game is going to come with, correct?
Yes.
Then don't feel bad about missing out about the meeples. I think that you're probably getting just an absolutely fine resource for it.
Yeah, and frankly, I would be kind of interested in picking up a set of the wooden meeples, just because I like the wooden meeples. We played with them a lot at PAX Unplugged, and they're very cute too.
Okay.
Got that same kind of round, and they got the claw hand.
But they are functional. I mean, weak ankles aside, you see your robot, he's your color. He's on one of the 9 squares. Good job.
Back to components, and this kind of goes into replayability in a way. I love how much variability there is in this game, which is good for the most part with how many gears there are in the bag. They're all unique, and I think there's 40 or 50 gears in the bag there. So you get tons of different options that after seeing, I've been through probably 14, 15 games of this game by now. In this 2-player game that we played last night, there were things that you pulled out that I had not seen before, and that's amazing to me. I also love the fact that there's 27 different, or maybe 21 or 27, one of those numbers, different city tiles in the game. So you can play this game a bunch and come up with a lot of different combinations. What I will say about that, though, is that it does also mean that your city tiles might make the game pretty unbalanced.
Yeah, it's really important when you're playing this game that when you flip over a city tile, you let everybody else who's playing the game know what the city tile says. Don't just flip it over and be like, oh, it kind of means this. Read the tile text, because there are tiles that give you, I think it's 2 points a tile for every other tile of that color that you occupy. Now, in a game with a balanced number of colors, that's fine. The 2-player game we were playing had, I think, 3 of each of the 3 different colors of tile. So the most you were getting every turn for that was 6 points. That's a bunch of points, but it's not a game-breaking amount of points. I had another game where the tile that gives you 2 points for every green tile that you occupy came out, and there were 6 green tiles on the board. So you really need to make sure that if somebody else is activating that tile, you're also playing that strategy of the game, because otherwise they're going to be getting 12 points a turn.
Oh, that's a lot.
And you don't really have the means to keep up with that without accessing that strategy.
Yeah, and what I will say is that with the length of the game, it's not like you're playing a 2 or 3 hour game that is going to be super unbalanced. And if you want to, you have the ability to set it up and say, all right, this is my green stack, my blue stack, my red stack. I'm going to take 3 at random out of each of them, shuffle them up. So you could do that if you wanted to. But be aware that there is that randomness that comes up with the city building that might make your game pretty wacky in multiple directions.
Yeah, you can fix this thing. That doesn't mean that it's not an issue with the game, though.
So talking about gameplay, I think would be a good place to move here. I really enjoy the ramp up of this game to a point. Your very first turns are going to be very simple. You roll your dice, you do one or two things. But it has an interesting mechanic that you're able to save over some resources if you don't use them. You can save one of each of the three resources, and then you have a wild slot to save another resource of one of those three. You also have these movement tokens, which are kind of just allowed for a point of movement. They can't activate machines, anything like that. And they are unlimited. You can save as many of those as you want. So by the end of the game, you're getting out to the point where you come in with maybe two things saved up and three or four of these movement tokens, and maybe you have one or two developments in your engine down there that give you even more resources. And also, you get a fourth die once the white gears go into the bag, so you have the ability to do a whole ton of stuff on your turn. But I will say is that if your game continues to go longer, that might be a spot where you're going to be spending a lot of time watching other players play the game.
Yeah, and that was sort of my big hang-up. I enjoyed my plays of this game, but in a 4-player game, there was definitely a point where we were waiting like 10 minutes at least between turns, and I can see how that can get really frustrating. We were luckily out at an event that we were running, so I was keeping track of other things that were going on. But if you're just sitting there waiting 10 minutes for your turn, and a lot of your turn is based on the resources you get from a die roll, you can't plan on... I mean, you can plan a little bit in advance. If you have saved resources, you can decide what you're going to activate if you have saved resources, but you can't plan your whole turn before you roll your dice because you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And you've only got one converter cog that allows you to turn to 2 of one resource into 1 of any other resource. So you are a little bit beholden to what you roll on the dice, especially if none of the tiles that allow you to re-roll any of your dice are out in the game. There are some tiles that when you activate them, they allow you to re-roll. So there is definitely a downtime that you feel in this game. Now, in a 2-player game, it's obviously way less because you're only waiting for one other person. And I have a feeling 2 or 3 is where I'm going to play this in the future. I don't really want to wait for 3 other people to take their turns in this game. Especially not 3 other people who are interested in winning. Like, if everybody wasn't really paying attention and just was like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, fine. Obviously, that goes quicker when you don't care. But that's not as much fun. You want to have, like, a good game with other people who care, and that means you're going to be waiting 10 to 15 minutes for your turn in a 4-player game, and I don't really care to do that.
I will say, I was surprised how much I enjoyed the 2-player game. It was at that point, we both played it a few times, we understood how the game works, and we were able to make it pretty snappy. And having 2 players, you still have the 3x3 grid of city tiles, so you have a little bit more time to engine build and kind of position yourself before the conflict and the area control begins. I also really like what it does with 3 players. Generally, in a 3-player game, you would expect, you're on 3 out of the 4 sides there, and then whoever the 3rd player is going to be at a distinct disadvantage because they'll obviously be the last person to get into the center. But the way they kind of offset that is the 3rd player's player board is 1 tile offset, so it actually starts kind of on a corner. And when I got to play some 3-player games at PAX Unplugged, I really was impressed with the way that balanced it out for the 3rd player. And I actually found it a really awesome balance between the space we had in 2 players and the immediate conflict that we had in 4 players. So the 3-player game is actually a really interesting way to play this because, again, you get to do both parts so that you really like this game.
Okay, so 2 or 3, but not 4.
So there is another 4-player variant that will decrease the conflict. What you do is you take your 3x3 grid, and instead of placing everybody's factory board directly on the middle tile, you slide it back 1, and you add 1 tile that's a buffer between the factory board and the central 3x3. So you
your
end up,
own little private tile,
yeah,
pretty
you
much?
have your own bridge, basically, into the central area. And again, that's designed to give you a little bit more room to engine build and get a few more cogs into your machine before you hit that center. I will say, I would wager that that's going to lengthen the game a good bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, my problem was not that there was too much conflict, because like I said earlier, the conflict in this game doesn't really destroy anything permanently. You can always just spend a couple of those movement tokens you're going to be swimming with by the end of the game anyway, and move your guy back out to where he was destroyed from. He's not going to cost you anything to reuse. It's not like you have to repurchase that. My problem is more that waiting for somebody else to figure out what they're going to do just takes a bunch of time. And so much of this game relies on using your personal engine. You know, what can I activate and what benefits does that give me? How can I convert that? What gears have I pulled out that I now have a new power that I can immediately use? Because when you pull gears out, anything you add to your factory is immediately available to you. Mm-hmm. So, surprise, you have a new thing that you weren't planning on using because you didn't know it was going to exist, and that's going to make your turn longer. Again, like I said, 2 or 3, yes. 4, probably not again.
Okay. So, with all those concerns in mind, did you still have fun playing City of Gears?
I did. I enjoyed the fact that I never felt like I couldn't use the things that I rolled. I was a little worried when I saw that there were dice that were going to generate the resources. I was like, okay, I'm notoriously bad at rolling what I need on dice. So am I going to end up with a whole bunch of stuff I can't use and nothing I need to be able to do? But that wasn't the case at any point. Because you have that converter gear that allows you to turn, 2 of your little movement clouds into a lightning if you need it. Or if you have nothing but cogs coming in because that's the tiles that came out. And I do want to say, the tiles that come out dictate also the resources that you get when you activate them. So every game is not only going to be different because of the powers on the tiles, but because of the combination of resources you can get in the game when you activate stuff. So, maybe the tiles that you're activating are giving you resources that you don't necessarily need that many of because you've got other ways to get them or whatever. Mm-hmm. You can always convert 2 of them into something that you need if you absolutely need one of something. And you can save at least 1 of each resource from round to round. Technically, you can save 2 of one resource, so any resource that you need 2 of, as long as you've got it, you can save it in that extra spot, the one that you need. It's fun, and it feels like I can do things with the engine that I can build. At the same time, it is not just a free-for-all. It is thoughtful because you need to make sure that you're keeping other players in check based on the powers that they have and the powers that are on the tiles. There's always a nice synergy that you can create because you're pulling so many special powers and you can replace the ones that are in your factory. And because you know fairly early in the game what all the tiles' special abilities are going to be, you can create a synergy, you can make sure that you maintain it, you can discard a power that's no longer working at the point when you decide it's no longer working because you're essentially pulling gears every turn, unless you decide to do the thing that you said that you had in your trial game where people just stop to make the game longer. It feels thoughtful, but it also feels fun and it feels free enough that I can play and do things and try to figure out a new strategy with what I have. I feel like this falls into the same category that Terraforming Mars falls into for me. It is a good game that I enjoy playing, not necessarily to quite the same degree, because Terraforming Mars is one of my favorite games, and this is a good game, but not one of my favorite games. But it does have a few component issues that I feel hold it back a little bit, the art particularly. And it does take a while to get back to your turn, which is a problem Terraforming Mars also has, because everybody has their long engine buildy turn. That being said, I'm going to play both of these games again, that and Terraforming Mars, which is not the matter here. I'm going to play this game again. It's just going to be in a specific situation. It's going to be with 2 or 3 players. It's going to be with people that are fairly good at this type of engine building game that can make a decision quickly. So, people that I feel that way about are more likely to be the people that I'm going to be like, hey, let's play City of Gears.
I would like to round this out with one of Jake's patented anecdotes. Is that okay?
You're Jake.
Okay. So, while demoing this, we had a lot of different groups come through, and I had one group of people, and I guess this was kind of middle of Saturday evening or afternoon, so 4 o'clock on Saturday. Your typical, 2 guys and then 2 girls came in, and I don't think anybody really knew anybody, but everybody was kind of walking by and seeing it, and they got playing this, and kind of quiet to start out. Got to the point where they started interacting a lot on the board, and the quietest person at the table started making really aggressive moves. And from that moment on, everybody just started having more and more fun every time something got destroyed, and they got really excited. They got so into it. And this is the group, actually, that stopped pulling cogs for a while because they were having so much fun with the area control, the movement, they didn't want the game to end. And this, usually for a demo, we only go about halfway through the game, but they were having such an awesome time with it that we just let them kind of continue on to the point where between 2 of their turns, 3 of the people got up and grabbed one off the shelf to sit down with it because they were having such a fun time. And I actually had person who was standing there, like, didn't even get to have a chance to get to the demo yet, grabbed one off the shelf and was ready to pick it up. And then I had some lady walk up and it's like, I heard a bunch of noise over here. Tell me about this game. I'm like, well, it's one part this and one part this. And she's like, stop, I'm going to go get it. And it was the kind of experience that I feel like this game can have, but won't always have. It has the opportunity to be a whole ton of fun when a bunch of people get into it and they really want to pretty much zap each other to pieces. And also want to have that meatiness of the variability and the engine building that they get to have in their own personal piece of the pie. If you have a group of friends that likes to have that kind of game where you are slapping each other around, but there's no hard feelings because the game only takes about an hour, I think City of Gears is worth looking at. And I find it interesting that after demoing it for 12 hours, I came back from PAX Unplugged ready to play this game more. And we have. And I've had fun with it still, even after doing it from a teaching point of view for so long. Like, I actually just want to play this game. To the point where I'm really glad that it continued to be as fun as I played it a year ago when it was paper and cardboard chits that had been printed out in the office printer there. So if you like to have some punching, some whacking kind of fun, City of Gears might be up your alley. But do be aware of the variability of that ending and the fact that it's possible that this game is wildly unbalanced from time to time. But frankly, sometimes unbalanced is a little bit of fun.
And it'll be equally unbalanced for everyone.
Very true. All right, well, that rounds out City of Gears, but should we go put some beers on tap?
We should.
For more information on the beers we chose to pair with today's game on tap, check out the show notes section at our website, draftmechanic.net. So in case you forgot, in the last 8 seconds, we are putting City of Gears on tap, the 2018 release from Grey Fox Games, 2 to 4 players, 45 minutes, designed by Chris Leader and Daryl Andrews, with art by Anthony Cornier, Chris Leader, and Tyler Myatt. Danielle?
I was a little bummed out that I can think of two bicycle breweries, and neither one of them had a beer that I wanted to put in this on tap.
Really?
I just like to say that off the top of my head. Crank Arm and Peddler Brewing, you let me down.
Come on, y'alls.
But we do have 4 beers that are nice City of Gear related beers, so why don't you start us off?
All right, from the Hub, Hopworks Urban Brewery in Portland, Oregon, we have Gear Up IPA, the American IPA, 6.6% ABV, 76 IBU, and this one is a Northwestern-style IPA with hop notes of passion fruit, pineapple, and mango. It's available in 12-ounce cans. I like Hub. They do some cool stuff.
I think that they had said that this was their first foray into 12-ounce cans as well, so go support them, have them can in their product. Next up from Gear Tooth Ale Works in San Jose, California, we have Father Cog Imperial Stout. If you are local to Gear Tooth and you've seen this before, it might have been under Cogfather. They have recently changed the name, so this is the same Imperial Stout. It is 9.5% ABV and 50 IBU. It's an imperial stout with notes of roast coffee, chocolate, and dark fruits. They suggest pouring it over vanilla bean ice cream, and I heartily agree because that sounds delicious.
I want it.
It is available in 16-ounce cans.
Next up, from Foam Brothers in Burlington, Vermont, we have Like Clockwork. It's a double IPA, 8.2% ABV. It's a double IPA with flavors of orange, resin, pineapple, and pine. Looks like they did some 16-ounce cans on this one.
It does, and just to point it out, I know you just said it, but this does have that resiny and pine flavors, so if that's something you don't like in an IPA, I know a lot of IPAs have been moving away from that and towards a citrusy note. This is going to have those piney flavors, so if you're looking for something like that, this would be the one for you.
I wonder if the name of that beer is a Queens of the Stone Age reference as well. That was the name of one of their most recent albums. ... Like Clockwork.
It's possible.
Well, either way, Clockwork, gear, it works.
And finally, from Snitz Creek Brewery in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, we have Opening Day IPA.
Oh, perfect.
This is an American IPA that is 6% ABV and 98 IBU, so it is a bitter fella right there. Mm-hmm. It is a West Coast style IPA, which makes that IBU make sense, that is dry hopped with Citra hops, and it is only available on draft if you are in the Lebanon, Pennsylvania area.
I'll take one of those. Citra is definitely one of my favorite hops.
Gonna be in Pennsylvania this week, so...
All right, well, maybe I'll stop at Snitz Creek and see what they're doing.
Maybe you will.
Maybe I will. Well, if you would like more information on any and all of those beers, the show notes section at the website draftmechanic.net will have that information, and you can go there for it. And also, of course, if you want, you can always find us on Untapped if you use the Untapped app to track your beers. I am INDJK, and Danielle is Laughs Too Easily.
And Danielle is the important one in this because I have all of these lists up on my lists that you can access. They're all public, so if you have a game that you are looking for the on-tap for, you can just go and they'll all be listed in the same place, and you can just pull them right up there.
There you go. Danielle, what do you have prepared for us in the beer segment in this, the final episode of 2018?
Well, very much to that effect. Since this is the final episode of 2018, I was like, we've talked about holiday beers before, a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. We've talked about winter warmers. We've talked about, like, spices in beers. We've talked about all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But we haven't talked about New Year's beers. Mm. Because New Year's isn't generally like a beer thing. People think New Year's, they think champagne.
High Life?
Yeah, I thought about it.
Okay.
I thought for a second, I was like, why don't we break with the craft beer for a second and I'll do a history of Miller High Life. And dear. I almost did it.
Yeah, I will say, I've had a High Life from time to time. It's a nice drinking beer.
It's fine.
It's not great. But
it's not what we're talking about.
Okay. Anyway, what are we talking about?
We are talking about Biere de Champagne.
Nice.
Or Bier Brut, if you are...
Brut.
Yes, Brut.
Brut.
If you are seeing that. That makes sense because Brut is a type of champagne, a drier champagne, and it would make sense that the beer would be a little bit drier because the sugar ferments out, becomes the alcohol. That's how that works. So to talk about the style, this is not actually about so much what goes into the beer. So the style of beer that becomes Biere de Champagne is not super important. A lot of Belgian breweries, well, not a lot, but a lot of the Biere de Champagne is from Belgian breweries, but there are some in the US that do like a double IPA base and then do it as a Biere de Champagne. What makes it that style of beer is that it is done in the style which is called Méthode de Champenois. Please forgive my lack of ability to speak French. This means that it's primary fermented, like any beer would be, but then they add some champagne yeast and they do a secondary bottle fermentation in the Méthode de Champagne. Which means that they rotate the bottle. Well, first they tilt it, so it is tilted towards the cork, and they rotate it slowly over a couple of months, and that allows the sediment from the yeast to settle into the neck of the bottle. It's called riddling, or if you are very French, remoulage.
Remoulage.
Then the bottlenecks are flash frozen with a cold liquid, and they get that block of sediment they flush it, essentially. The carbonation in the bottle pushes that block of sediment that's formed right at the cork and flushes it out. This is called disgorgement, which really doesn't sound any better if you are very French and you say dégorgement or dégorgement.
Dégorgement.
Either way, it doesn't sound any better. It's still kind of gross sounding. But that leads to a very clean beer because you got all those yeast lees out of there. And it is very bubbly from that second fermentation with the champagne yeast. It is obviously served in a 750 milliliter bottle and corked and caged, like champagne. Frankly, the most popular one of these, which comes from the Bastille's brewery, it's called Deus, capital D, little EU, capital S. It is served in a champagne-shaped bottle as well, so the curves on it are slightly different than a normal 750 bottle, if that matters to you. They actually send the beer from that brewery, from the Bastille's, they send it to the Champagne region to allow it to age right alongside actual champagne from Belgium. They made their label so similar to the Dom Perignon label that they actually had to change it. They were compelled at the risk of legal action to change it. And there are other beers that were making Biere de Champagne that were also very much verging on infringing on trademarks of actual champagne companies.
Oh, no.
Like I said, this is also called Bier Brut. So if you are shopping for your New Year's beer for your very festive celebration, if you see a Biere de Champagne or a Bier Brut, you might want to give it a try because it will be something that is certainly different than most other beers that you've had, and it is meant for celebration. So I wanted to let everybody know about that in case they see it when they're shopping, so they can have a very special celebration.
Living the high life? Huh?
Get out.
Oh, okay. I'll go over to the final round. Want a second opinion on some of the games we talked about on this episode? Check out some other great content creators at punchboardmedia.com. All right, it is time for the final round where we ask the Draft Mechanics Slack channel their thoughts on a particular topic. And this one was actually suggested by Patrick Hillier an episode or two ago, and I wanted to save it for this one. So, here's Patrick's final round for everybody. What are your 2019 board gaming resolutions? If you remember your resolutions from this time last year, how did you do?
Well, our first answer comes from Eric Buscemi, who you would have heard if you listened to our last episode. So here's a follow-up with Eric. I want to take an entire month this year, maybe February, and not learn any new games that month. Just play games I already know how to play. And that sounds kind of, sort of not as huge as of a resolution as it may end up being. Eric also does a lot of reviews, so we're always learning new stuff. And to just go back and replay stuff and get an idea of how you're feeling about it now that you've gotten a little bit of distance, I think that's a really worthwhile endeavor. And something that I'm sure takes the effort to, like, set aside that time.
Yeah. January and February are also really a good time to do that as well, because you haven't quite hit convention season yet. Well, we do have Tantrum Con is coming up in February down in Spartanburg.
Eric lives in New York. I don't think he's going to make it to South Carolina.
We have that board game thing we're going to in January. So maybe we won't pick those months. Are we doing anything in March? All right. Next up from D. Shannon Berry. It wasn't a resolution, but in January, I set a goal of losing weight, tracking my progress on BGG, and earning money for losing that weight. In July, I was able to buy myself Gloomhaven. I also pledged to acquire fewer games this year than I had last year. That one I failed miserably and somehow gained twice as many games in 2018 as I had in 2017. For next year, I'm keeping both resolutions, aiming to earn Tainted Grail with my weight loss, and hopefully doing better with my acquisition disorder. I've also made a promise to myself to use the hobby to spread joy and hope to give away many more games to schools, friends, and the community than I ever have before. I love that. Motivating yourself in a cool way and getting yourself in a better physical place that you want to get and rewarding yourself in a fun hobby is a really cool goal, and I love that a lot.
Not only that, but he's reaching out and spreading the joy with other people in his community. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of games in our collection that we've passed off to other people, other friends that are going to enjoy and play those more than we will, too. So, awesome. Love it.
Paul Immonen said, I have a number of unplayed games on my shelf. My resolution is to play them and decide whether I'm keeping them. And if I don't play them, that's a tell. It's a year of getting rid of stuff. And that's reasonable. There's a certain amount of time that stuff just doesn't get played because we all have busy life going on. But if you've got stuff sitting on your shelf for a bunch of years, maybe you want to keep it because it's special. But if you're just keeping it to keep it, maybe you'll be better getting rid of it, passing it on to somebody who can enjoy it, like D. Shannon Barry was talking about.
That's kind of how I'm feeling about Arcadia Quest and Rising Sun.
I agree with one of those.
Yes. We have there's so many miniatures. I don't want to set them all up. It's so complicated.
Okay, stop complaining.
Right. Peter says, my goals for 2018 were to track my plays on BGG, complete a 10x10, did it, get in 365 plays, done a couple of months ago, and play 365 games. Not going to happen. I'm currently at 173 different games this year. I also ranked my top 50 games each month. I learned a lot from doing that. One of the things that I have learned is that I am not doing that again next year. Doing monthly rankings taught me how fickle my tastes are. When I want to play can change daily depending on how new something is or how long it has been since I played an old favorite, or if a game gets overplayed, or how the previous game went. I will probably still track my plays, but I don't plan on doing any challenges next year. Cool.
A lot of these challenges are ones that you also were involved in. You were doing a 365, right?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. I know that a few days ago I got my Play 365. I've had 365 plays for the year. I did 12 six-packs as a challenge, which is kind of a function of the show, so I feel kind of silly even doing that one. And another goal that I had was play 200 different games, which is a big goal in general, and I'm at 169 right now. I actually feel pretty good about that. I obviously had a lot of change in life and just in terms of my workload and where I'm traveling, stuff like that, so it was harder to get games in. But being able to get 169 different games in a year, I'm actually pretty happy with that.
Maybe you'll break 170 by the end of the year. We've still got a week left.
I can probably play one new game by the end of this year. We'll see.
And finally, Patrick Hillier, who actually brought this final round to us, said, with the changes to my parents' health in 2018 and the unknowns of 2019, I've reconsidered my resolutions. I don't need to play all the games or attend all the cons. I'm spending more time with my close friends and family and playing games with them.
Here.
Yeah, I think that's a great resolution. I mean, we sometimes get caught up in having to get everything in that we sort of lose track of what the point of having an awesome hobby like board gaming is, and spending time with the people we care about in favor of just like new stuff. And I think Patrick has done a very cool thing refocusing in on what's very important.
I am hoping in a way that with the travel that I have to do next year, I get to go and play with gaming friends that I have on the internet that are out there and I don't get to see other than cons. Because, like, we'll run into Patrick at a convention every now and then, or, see Eric Buscemi or something like that, or, see Crystal every once a year or so at Gen Con. But I would love to actually just be places and play games with people that isn't a convention. So I'm really hoping that I get to see all y'all out there somewhere in 2019. That would be a lot of fun. So, to wrap up this final round, I want to kind of put out a thing for our next final round. Like I said, January 7th, we'll have our 2018 in review, and I would love to hear from all the listeners out there that are interested in contributing on our Slack channel and on our Board Game Geek Guild. We're going to put up a thread for what is your biggest surprise in gaming in 2018. It can be a game that you played for the first time, or a game you thought you were going to hate and love, or a game that you really thought you would be a big fan of, but you got into it and you're like, I don't want to do this at all. I would just love to hear some awesome stories about how gaming impacted you in 2018 and what was something crazy and cool that happened in your gaming life. So you can go to draftmechanic.net and hit the button for Slack if you want to go sign up for the Slack channel there.
Or just go to the Board Game Geek Guild. There will be a thread up there as well.
What guild number is it, Danielle?
It's guild number 2470. Always has been, always will be.
There it is. You can also hit us on the Instagram, the Twitter, the Facebook, at Draft Mechanic on all of those places. Send us an email at draftmechanic@gmail.com if you wish as well. That's also a good option.
If you happen to be in the Charlotte, North Carolina area on Thursday, January 3rd, we would love to see you at our meetup at Good Road Cider Works. Come out, have some cider or some non-alcoholic beverages if you prefer, and hang out and play some games.
Oh, if you need cool threads for New Year's Eve, you can go get a Draft Mechanic t-shirt as well. It's redbubble.com/people/draftmechanic/shop, I think. I don't know. Go to draftmechanic.net, click the banner. It's easy. Also, you probably don't want to wear a Draft Mechanic shirt to New Year's. Look fancy.
I don't.
Look very fancy. Wear very fancy clothes. All right, Draft Mechanic is sponsored by Gray Fox Games. Visit grayfoxgames.com and sign up for their newsletter for the latest Gray Fox games, quality games, cleverly crafted. So that's the last one of the year, huh?
I mean, it's almost the last one of the year.
No, this is the last one we're recording this year.
Yeah, I know, but we're not done yet.
I mean, I feel done. Did I forget something?
As always, I would like to remind our listeners to please game responsibly, particularly as we're coming up on New Year's. Mm-hmm. And tell them that I'll see them back here in 2 weeks for another round.
All right. See you in 2019.
Night.
Draft Mechanic episode 91 was recorded on Saturday, December 22nd, 2018 in front of a live studio cat.
Beauty is in your eyes, you are the beholder. You render me stricken. Do not go gently into that gutter line.
Hi, this is Eric Buscemi, popping in to let you know about a continuing interview series I've been doing on the Punchboard Media website called In Focus, Perspectives in Board Gaming. I've been interviewing people that work in all different facets of the board game industry, such as designers Nikki Valens and Daniel Salas, artists Fernandez Suarez and Beth Sobel, board game publishers Anne-Marie DeWitt and Shari Spiro, and many other people with unique industry perspectives. Check out our interviews on the Punchboard Media website, www.punchboardmedia.com, where a new one is posted every Wednesday afternoon.
Punchboard Media,
where we all bring something to the table.
Pull up a chair
at punchboardmedia.com.